Hey everyone, Tin Man here, and this is a complete beginner's guide and tutorial for Dota Underlords, a free-to-play game available on Steam and published by Valve. I'll cover the absolute basics of gameplay and mechanics, not so much on the higher level strategy, although I have plenty of videos covering that as well. If you're familiar with other games in the auto-battler genre, like Teamfight Tactics or Auto Chess, then a lot of the concepts will carry over, but of course there are many mechanics specific to Dota Underlords. The in-game how to play is not really much, but it serves as a good starting point to understand what's going to be going on. Let's go over it real quick. Then I'll jump into a bot game to show you how it all works in practice. First, Underlords is an 8-player strategy game where the last player standing wins. The focus is on strategy and decision making rather than reaction time or fast button clicking. It's divided into rounds, and each round has 2 phases. In the preparation phase, you'll buy units and arrange your board, and then a combat phase where your board of units will battle another player's board of units, or occasionally a loot round. These fights happen automatically, so there's no player input involved during the fight, but your choice of units and their initial positioning has a massive impact on the outcome. After each combat, your units will reset, get healed up, and you'll have another chance to make adjustments and prepare for the next round. Every round you'll get gold, which can be used to either buy units, but also to level up, which lets you put more units on the board. Every round you'll also have a somewhat random assortment of heroes in the shop available to buy. Each one will cost a certain amount of gold, and if you can collect 3 identical copies of the hero, then they'll combine and rank up to form a more powerful 2-star version of that hero, and then if you collect 3 2-star copies, you'll get a most powerful 3-star version. Every hero has its own stats, abilities, and alliances, which encourage you to play multiple heroes of the same alliance to unlock bonus effects. Some of the combat rounds will be loot rounds, where you'll fight against predetermined enemies. You'll then get items which can be equipped to your units to augment their strength. Some items you can place on the board instead of equipping them, or some also just have global passive effects. Most rounds, though, will be against real people and their chosen army of units. The loser of these rounds will take damage based on how many opposing units survived, and after losing many rounds, you'll be eliminated when your health total drops from 100 down to 0. And finally, you have your namesake unit, the Underlord. This is a starting unit that each player can choose before the start of the game. There are currently only 2 Underlords released, a Nesix and Hobgin, but they'll be adding more over time. These Underlords have powerful abilities and talents, as well as a unique mechanic called Hype that we'll get back to later. They'll definitely have a large impact on the fight and can influence your strategy. Okay, that's enough reading. Let's hop into a game and show you what's actually going to go on. From the main screen here, you can view the available Underlords by clicking the left and right arrows here. Let's start with Hobgin for this tutorial. To play, you click on the play button, and we're going to play a bot match, and we're going to, instead of resume, we're going to start a new one on standard easy mode. You get another chance to confirm your Underlord, and then we click begin match. As it loads in, it'll show the portrait of all the other players' Underlords, so you know what you're up against. On the first screen here, we're going to pause the game really quick. Normally you cannot pause this, but in a bot game you can pause it by clicking the pause button right there. At the very top here, we have a timer, counting down the time remaining in the preparation phase. Once this reaches 0, your board is locked in for the combat round. You can pause this in a bot game, but not in a game against other players. Right below it, we'll have the shop of available heroes, which we hid, or you can re-show by clicking on this button, or the default keybind spacebar. These 5 heroes can be purchased for their gold cost, but on the first turn we only have access to the 1-cost heroes shown by the 1 in the gold icon right here. Over the course of the game, we'll get access to higher cost and more powerful units up to 5 cost, but we have to start out small. Our gold available is shown in 2 places, one up here by the X button that hides the shop, and the other one down here by our Underlord in the gold text down here. There's also information here about our level, the blue 1, and our health total, the green 100, as well as other Underlord information we'll get back to. To buy a unit, simply click on it, and then it will move from the shop down onto your bench at the bottom of the screen. Your bench is a place to store up to 8 additional heroes that you may want to use later, but you can't fit on your board right now. You can freely exchange units from your bench and your board during the preparation phase. And you can freely rearrange your bench by just clicking and dragging units around to different spots on the bench. Since we're out of gold, let's hide the shop by clicking the X. The shop can be reopened by clicking the icon again, and it's always available. You can always buy units from the shop at any point during the round, even during combat, if you have the appropriate gold. Now let's take a look at the board. The board is an 8x8 grid, similar to a chessboard, and we can see our Underlord is already on the board. We can click him to bring up some information on the left side here. You cannot remove your Underlord from the board, but you can move him around by clicking and dragging. You can place your units and Underlord anywhere on your half of the board, so these first 4 rows. In the early game, the exact positioning doesn't matter too much, but later on, the positioning of all of your units will matter much more heavily. Right underneath the Underlord is a 0/1. This means that we have 0 units on board out of a maximum of 1. This limit will increase over the course of the game, capping out at 10 units on the board, not counting the Underlord. Let's get our unit Tiny on the board here by dragging him off the bench anywhere onto the board. On the first 3 rounds, we'll be fighting against neutral monsters to get some item loot. They're previewed up here. It serves as a good introduction to combat, and lets you see how your units will behave. To skip to combat in the bot game, we'll click this button right here and combat will begin, but normally this would just happen when the timer runs out. During combat, our units are going to move towards the enemy units and attack them. The green floating bar above them is their life total, and the blue bar below them is a mana total. Mana is used to cast abilities, which I'll discuss in a moment, and the Underlord uses a different system called Hype, also that is a bit more complicated and will be discussed shortly. At the end of the loot round, we're going to have some options to pick one of these 3 items. Typically, this item section is timed, as you can see by this ticking timer here, but in the bot game, we have all the time that we want. These items can be equipped to our units to increase their stats, such as Gloves of Haste here, which will give them plus 25 attack speed. And let's pick that one and then go to the next round. Once we pick this item, the next round will start. Our shop will refresh and we'll get some new options available. Notice that now we have 2 gold to spend, and if we don't spend it, then it will carry over to next round. Our level has also increased, shown here in the bottom right section of the shop. Now we are allowed to place 2 units on the board, as indicated by the 1/2. We can either buy 2 1-cost units or a single 2-cost unit. The higher cost units are generally stronger, but not twice as strong despite twice the cost, perhaps only slightly stronger than the 1-cost unit. To help us make this decision, each hero is the member of some alliances, with the icons shown below. You can hover over the alliance icons to get more information. So for example, Pudge here is a member of the Warrior Alliance, which says that if you have 3 different warriors on your board, then they all get plus 7 armor. But if you manage to get 6 unique warriors, then that bonus jumps up to plus 20 armor on all of them. Multiple copies of the same hero do not count towards these thresholds. So if you have multiple copies of Pudge, you don't get 2 progress towards these thresholds. The little marks on the icon indicate your current progress towards the alliance. So you can see on the warrior icon, we have 1 little blue section filled in. That means we currently have 1 warrior on our board. Once we get 3, then it will activate. In order to activate, the units need to be in combat, not just on the bench to count for the alliance. But even if they die during the round, your alliances are already locked in, and they don't fade over the course of the fight. Also notice that these icons under the normal alliance icons, these indicate that you already have progress towards this alliance. That's kind of an indication that maybe you should pick this unit because it's progressing towards an alliance that you already have progress toward. We have Tiny, who is part of the Warrior and Primordial Alliance, so Pudge would be a second Warrior, or Razor over here would be a second Primordial. So let's buy Pudge here. We click on him, spend our 2 gold, and he goes straight to the bench. Since we have no more gold, let's close out the shop and take a look over here at our Alliance progress bar on the right-hand side. This is showing basically what we already saw in the shop, but this is static for our board. The little marks indicate how many units we currently have towards that progress. For example, we have 1 Primordial, and then we also have 1 Warrior, being Tiny, but we also have a second mark here outlined, meaning that we have 1 available on our bench that could go in and get that progress if we choose to put him in. So let's put Pudge in by clicking and dragging him out onto the board, and let's drop him right next to Tiny. When we click on a hero on our board or on the bench, we see details about the hero on the left, including the maximum health total here in green, the alliances that they're part of, their damage per attack, their attack rate, which is the number of attacks per second, so a higher number is better, and then their armor, which reduces damage taken by a percentage, and their kill count. This kill count only matters for some alliances and items, but does nothing on its own. Next we see their ability icon, and we can hover over it to get more info. This ability is cast when the unit reaches maximum mana, then it is cast using up that mana and going on cooldown. If the unit survives long enough in combat to wait out the cooldown and gain maximum mana again, the ability may be cast multiple times per fight. We can also sell the unit by clicking down here, or by using the keybind, which is E by default. selling a unit will recoup some of the gold that you spent to buy it from the shop with no loss of gold. So if we change our mind on Pudge here, we only spent 2 gold to buy it, and we can get that 2 gold right back. Same with all other units. Before we get into next combat, let's make sure to equip our items. The icons are shown over here on the right, and to equip, simply click and drag them onto a unit. If you change your mind, no worries, simply click and drag it again to another unit to swap who is holding it. Each unit can only hold a maximum of 1 item, and the Underlord cannot hold an item, although I suppose they may one day make an item that the Underlord can use. When we equip the item, we can click on that unit again for details and see that the stat is increased. Now the attack speed has increased by 25% because of the Gloves of Haste. Let's see another combat to see these abilities and items in action by clicking on this Proceed to Combat button. We can see that the unit will cast their spells whenever they reach maximum mana. Now units will gain mana by attacking or taking damage, meaning that units who are hit by the enemies will often cast first before units who are safer in the back. We'll get another choice of items here after this round, and there will be a chance for some tier 2 items, which will be more powerful than tier 1 items. Let's see what we get an option of. Yes, we see a tier 2 item, the Big Time Contract, which gives us plus 500 health, and also changes the unit, or gives the unit the Bloodbound Alliance in addition to its other types. Let's pick up the tier 2 item because it's quite a powerful item, and then we can equip that to our next unit. So now we have 3 gold to spend and 3 unit slots, but this constant level up will slow down here. Notice that the level tracker in the bottom right hand corner of the shop. Every turn we gain 1 experience, and up until this point, each level only required 1 experience. But now it's going to require 3 XP, so it will play 3 rounds here at level 3 before leveling up to 4. That is, unless we want to spend 5 gold, which will then buy 5 XP all at once. We don't really have that much gold unless we sell off some of our units, which is not very helpful because then we don't have units to take advantage of the higher level cap. When we do level up, it will increase our board limit, but it will also change the odds of the units appearing in your shop, offering us more powerful and expensive units on average. Let's talk about the unit range. Whenever you click on a unit on the board, and then you hold down the mouse button, you can see some cells around them highlighted. Even when you move, you see the highlighted cells move around, as we are moving Tiny around here. This is the unit's attack range, and so if they are not in range of an opposing unit, they'll move towards the enemy to get in range. On this unit, only the adjacent cells are highlighted, meaning that it's a melee unit. While as other units, let's say we buy Razor here onto the bench, and we put him out, you notice he has a much larger range. He can attack units 3 cells away, based on the way the highlights work in all directions. So he's a ranged unit. And as a general matter, you want to put melee units up towards the front and then ranged units behind them to take advantage of their maximum range. Although there's a lot of subtlety and nuance to positioning, which I cover more in a video dedicated to that idea. So here on round 3 with our 3 units, we have completed the Primordial Alliance, or at least the first tier of it, meaning that whenever primordial units die, they'll spawn a rank 1 Eidolon, which is just a weak primordial unit that doesn't spawn additional Eidolons. However, if we can get 2 more primordials, then we can get rank 2 Eidolons, which are twice as powerful, and so on if we can get up to all 6 primordials. And this is the combination of Tiny plus Razor, which are highlighted here, and are also highlighted on our board. We still have 2 extra gold to spend, so let's buy 2 units out of the shop. Let's say Bounty Hunter and Venomancer, which then we could potentially get upgrades on them later, or maybe we change our mind and want to put them in on the board on a future round. They can sit on the bench until then. Before we get into next combat, let's of course equip our item. Let's move Big Time Contract over to Tiny, and then let's talk a little bit about our Underlords, since they have kind of unique abilities that are different than everybody else. While they still attack and take damage just like a normal unit, they have other passives and abilities. So instead of mana, they have Hype, which is passively generated according to this passive ability. It says Hobgen generates 1.5 Hype per second, with an additional 1 Hype per second for each unit that he has lit on fire, and this fire debuff deals damage of their maximum health over time. Any enemy that Hobgen attacks is set on fire for 3 seconds, but he can also set units on fire with his other abilities. His first ability is Explosivo, which says Hobgen launches a fireball at a target that deals 300 damage, split evenly amongst all targets adjacent to them, and setting them all on fire, with a cooldown of 12 seconds. And this ability scales with the Underlord, so over the course of the game, that 300 damage is going to be increasing in damage as the game goes on. It also says 33 hype there at the top. You can ignore that. That is a leftover from whenever these abilities worked slightly differently. That is just completely irrelevant right now. Don't look at that 33 hype. Also, he has second ability, Supercharged. Also has a 66 hype. Once again, ignore that. Hobgen supercharges the closest friendly unit, setting them on fire and granting them 26 attack speed. And that attack speed will scale up over the course of the game, just like the Explosivo. And this one has a cooldown of just 8 seconds. Underneath all of these abilities are the possible talents that you'll have a chance to pick at some point during the game that would modify these abilities in some way. We'll see talents once we get up to round 10, we'll get our first set of options. And by the time we get to round 20, you'll get the chance to pick an ultimate ability, which is a much more powerful ability that can only be cast once per fight. Now you may be wondering, what does the hype do if it doesn't cast your abilities? Your hype empowers your Underlord, increasing their damage output, as well as reducing the cooldown on those abilities. Once you get up to maximum hype, or just any level of hype, those cooldowns will be reduced and they'll be casting their abilities more often. In this next round, let's watch the Underlord specifically so we can see what's going on. As this combat starts, Hobgen is going to start slowly generating his hype on his own, which is this filled in bar underneath it, similar to a mana bar. The little white bars there indicate the cooldown on his different abilities. You can see the middle bar indicates the cooldown on Supercharge, which he just cast on Razor, and now he's casting Explosivo, but the unit died before he got to finish casting it because it has a little bit of a short cast time. And we can also see that his damage and other stats were increasing as he gained more hype. We also now have an opportunity to get new items. Here we see the option of picking up a tier 2 item, Blade Mail, which says that it reflects 30% of the damage taken back to the attacker. Now in general, higher tier items are better than the lower tier items. That's not always strictly true, but in general. So we'll pick up Blade Mail here and then we'll move on to the next round. During combat, and then for the preparation phase right after, we can view the stats from the last battle here in the upper right-hand corner, with the damage tab as well as other tabs, such as DPS, which is the damage per second that unit was alive, the damage that unit took, the healing that each unit did, which none of our units dealt any healing, as well as the number of kills that they got, and the amount of time that they spent disabling an enemy, either with a stun or other types of effects. You may notice that there's two different kinds or colors of bars here. The dark green indicates the damage dealt by the auto attack, just the normal regular attack from that unit, while the lighter blue indicates damage dealt by abilities. There could also be a third color, which would indicate damage dealt by items, such as Blade Mail, when we equip that for next round. So let's equip this Blade Mail to Pudge, who's one of the best people to use this item because he has such a high health total. That means he'll be taking lots of damage, and lots of damage could be reflected. That frees up the Gloves of Haste, which we can move back onto the Razor. Now in terms of the shop for this round, we want to pick up Tiny because we already have one copy of Tiny, as indicated by this icon right underneath, and once we get 3 copies, we'll be able to upgrade the Tiny. So let's click to buy him. As well as we still have 3 gold additional, but we can't buy 3 gold worth of units because they are all 2 cost. So we can buy something like Crystal Maiden, and then we have 1 gold left. But say we choose to get rid of this Venomancer, because we decided against him, we can sell him off for 1 gold, get back up to 2, and then we can buy Puck, meaning that now we have the potential to complete the Mage Alliance, because we have Razor as 1 mage, and as well as Crystal Maiden and Puck as the remaining 2 mages. As you can see over here, we have 1 on board, and then 2 more are outlined, meaning that we could add them in because they're on our bench. While we could move to mages, let's stick with our current board here and get into next combat, which will be a PvP round, so we'll go up against one of our actual opponents rather than just neutral creeps. So here we're going up against Athena Bot, who is playing Nesix as the Underlord, who has a unique ability. Rather than Hobgen, she summons a demon companion to attack for her, but you can still see she generates hype and has cooldowns of her own. Opponent has cast an ability to turn our Hobgen into a chicken for a few seconds, but he still comes out of that and casts a Supercharge and then casts Explosivo to deal big chunks of damage to the opponent. You can see our units are just barely winning this fight, surviving at very low health as we clear out the opponent. And you can see the live updates to the damage, and you can click through the tabs to see other information as well. So since we won the round here, right before here we're going to see a breakdown of our incoming gold. So we get 5 gold baseline, as well as 1 additional gold for winning the round. So at the start of the round, you're going to see that breakdown, and you're always going to get the 5 gold no matter what. If you win, you get 1 additional gold, but there are other ways of gaining gold as well. If you go on a win streak, meaning you win 3 rounds in a row, then you'll gain 1 additional gold on top of the winning gold, capping out at an additional 4 gold if you win 8 rounds in a row. At that point, the win streak will reset. If you're losing too hard, though, you'll start getting losing streak gold as well. 3 losses in a row will grant 1 additional gold, and if you keep losing, you'll get 2 additional gold up to 2 additional gold for losing streaks, but then it caps out at that and never resets. Winning and losing rounds is a little bit inconsistent since you can't guarantee you win or lose any given round. The most consistent way to gain gold is through interest. Every 10 gold you have saved up will generate you 1 additional gold of interest for the next round, maximum of 5 additional gold when you have 50 gold unspent. This interest is calculated at the start of the combat, and it does consider the 1 bonus gold for winning in its calculations. I know this is a little bit weird and a little bit complicated, but if you want more details and strategy discussion around gold management, check out my video linked below. Now on this new shop, we have the option of buying 3 copies of Puck, which is great because we already have 1, and we only need 2 more in order to get a 2-star version of Puck. So if we buy 1, we'll notice that the remaining ones get highlighted in this type of effect, which means that it represents an upgrade on our board. So if we would click the Puck, then we can buy it and it combines into a 2-star version, which essentially doubles the stats. So if we pick up this 1 star, we see that a 1-star Puck only has 900 health and 45 damage, whereas a 2-star Puck has 1800 health and 90 damage. Roughly speaking, 2-star units are twice as strong as their 1-star counterpart. And then if you manage to collect 3 copies of a 2-star unit, meaning 9 copies of a 1-star unit, you'll get it to 3-star, which is then double in effectiveness over the 2-star unit. The other thing to note with 2-star units is that they sell for less gold than you purchased them for. So we had to buy 3 Pucks, which cost us 6 total gold to buy 3 copies of Puck. But notice Puck only sells for 4 gold now, whereas the 1-star version still sells for a full refund. So it's a little bit of an investment whenever you make a 2-star unit, that you will lose some gold if you sell it off there, but any 1-star unit that you just buy right out of the shop can still be resold for its exact same cost. So let's get Puck onto the board, our 2-star version of Puck. Let's say we want to replace our Razor with it, and then we can move the item from Razor back over to the Puck. Then we want to start combat, so we will click on this button again, and we'll get into round 5 of combat against Simonbot. Our enemies are chosen at random every round, so we don't know who we're going to be facing ahead of time. Looks like we're still going to win this fight because Puck deals lots of damage being a 2-star unit. We can see already at the top of the damage chart with that big magic damage output. At the end of this fight, we're going to be able to level up to the next level. We're going to get up to level 4 because we've spent 3 rounds here with just 3 units. And we'll have higher chance of getting better units in our shop. So since we won and we had just a few units surviving, the opponent took 4 damage over there that we saw. And now we get another opportunity to buy an upgrade such as Tiny. So let's buy this Tiny and get the 2-star upgrade, which will immediately go onto the board as a 2-star upgraded Tiny. But notice we have 5 gold left, and none of these units are really that appealing for us to buy. You know, maybe they complete some alliances, but maybe we just don't want them. Instead, let's level up. So we did level to 4 already, so we can put our 4th unit in. Let's say we put Razor back in. But if we want to level up again, we notice here that we are at 4, which is 0 of 5 XP towards level 5. And you can only buy experience in chunks of 5, and it costs us 5 gold. Sounds perfect. So if we click on this button or use the default keybind T, we'll level up to 5. Now we can play our 5th unit, and we can throw in the Crystal Maiden, which then completes the Mage Alliance, as indicated over here, now that we've got 3 mages on our board. Now this is quite powerful, since we are able to get new alliance, add an extra unit in, whereas most of our opponents will still be at level 4. So now that we have 5 units, we should have an advantage on them going into next round of combat. So let's see how that all plays out. So here we're up against Genabot, a different opponent, but in theory we could have played anybody, still randomly assigned. Our opponent has an ability there, Pudge, hooked in our Crystal Maiden away from the back line. And meanwhile, our Tiny has cast his toss, and everybody else has gotten to use their abilities as well, as we just completely clean sweep them because of our massive advantage on units and the very high damage output from Puck, thanks in part due to the Mage Alliance. Now, we won our first 3 PvP rounds in a row, and now we collected 7 gold because we had the win streak, as well as the 5 base gold, and then the 1 extra gold for winning, for a total of 7 gold income. If we want to maximize our income even further, what we can do is sell off units to get up to 10 gold to also start collecting interest. So we could go for something like a 3-star Puck, which would once again require 9 copies of Puck, and we already have essentially 3 that are in our 2-star unit, plus our 4th here, but that's pretty far away to try to get up to 9 copies of the unit. So instead, we can just sell off Puck, and we can also sell off our Bounty Hunter here, and now we're at 10 gold. So that means starting next round, we're going to be able to get 1 bonus gold of interest at the start of the round. So to do that, let's get into combat, and we'll see how that happens. So once again, we go up against a new, different opponent, Solbot, and their board looks much weaker than ours because once again they only have 4 units and none of them are upgraded to 2 stars like our units are. The interesting thing about interest is that it locks in at the start of combat. So while combat's going on, I can buy this Pudge, or in fact I can buy as many units as I want out of this shop, and I'm still going to get that 1 gold of interest here. So you see we got 5 base gold, 1 interest, 1 win streak, 1 victory gold, and we still gain 8 gold of income. Now, winning rounds is great and all, but what happens if you would lose the round? Let's intentionally lose to find out. Let's pull all of our units off the board, or at least most of them, to fill up our bench here, and then just leave Hobgin with a Crystal Maiden. So obviously we only have 1 of 5 units, so we're going to be much weaker than we really could be, but let's go into combat anyway and see what happens. So I'd imagine we're going to get beat here by our opponent who has many more units than us, and we're going to take a little bit of damage because of it. Now, it's not all bad whenever we lose the round. Yes, we do take some damage, but we have 100 life, and early in the game, the damage output is fairly low. Our opponent has had 4 units plus their Underlord survive, so that's going to deal a total of 5 damage to us, also based on the star level of the unit, so higher star units deal more. But we also get free reroll. So we haven't talked about rerolls yet. So let's say you don't like the units that are available in your shop. I mean, we do like this pack because it has a lot of things that we already have, but let's say that we don't. Typically, it would cost you some gold to reroll this shop and get brand new units available to you. But whenever you lose a round, you get a little bit of a catch-up mechanic, and you can reroll for free on this round. It doesn't carry over, so you have to use it right away. So let's say if we didn't like these units, we would just reroll here, and we get a brand new set of units that are available. Whenever you do this reroll, that either was free, or if you try to do it again, it'll cost you 2 gold. The units that you're rerolling away, that are currently in the shop, are blacklisted and cannot show up in the next shop. So let's say we reroll again. None of these 5 units will show up in this new shop. Generally, it's not advisable to reroll very early on in the game, especially not the way we just did. That was just for demonstration purposes. Generally, you want to be leveling up or buying units early on and then rerolling later on whenever you really need specific units to find your upgrades. So let's put our units back on the board so we can actually stand a fighting chance in these fights. Let's use the same kind of composition, and really any kind of position could work out for these. The positioning is not super important this early on. There's one last mechanic about the shop. If you want to buy a unit but you do not have gold to buy it right now, then you can lock the shop, preventing it from refreshing next round, by clicking this lock button or using the default keybind Q. This means that next round, these same units will still be available, but you can use your income for next round to buy whatever units you may not have been able to afford this turn. Generally, this is pretty rare to do. The most common situation where you do this is when you have 3 of a kind on turn 1, so you can lock to get another unit, another 2-star unit on round 2. Otherwise, it's generally better to let it just naturally refresh to find more units. The last bit of UI that we want to discuss is the scoreboard. Now, it's always important to keep tabs on what your opponents are doing in the game. Every unit that appears in the shop comes from a shared hero pool, which is a little bit complicated, and you can find more details about it in my video in the description below. But suffice to say that it's easier to find certain units if no one else has bought them compared to units that many people already have. The scoreboard, shown up here in the upper left, or you can press and hold the tab button to show this display, is a list of every opponent sorted by their remaining health, with all of their units on their board, their star levels, their items equipped, as well as their record in matches, and just every little bit of information that you need to know to quickly assess the state of the game. This way you can see if an opponent is going for similar units to you. Let's say we click on Pudge, and it'll highlight every other Pudge that other people have bought. So I know that if a lot of people have bought a certain unit, it might be a little bit harder to find that unit for myself. Now this is a bit of a higher level strategy though, so if you're just a new player, just focusing on opponents is probably a little bit too much. You should just focus on yourself and your own units and your own strategy rather than reacting to enemies right away. And so that's about it for the gameplay user interface here. Let's play one more combat round, and then we can see how the shop will not refresh, as well as we can get to round 10, where we get the first chance to pick up an Underlord's talent. We see we're up against an opponent who has leveled up a couple of times. They've leveled up to 6, but they have very few star levels on their units. So despite the fact that we have one less unit than them, we should be able to take this down just because our star units are much more impactful than their units are. And you can see we do manage to beat them by just having a few units left, and despite their advantage, our units were better than theirs on average. So here we're about to go into round 10, and starting on round 10 and then every 5 rounds after, so 10, 15, 20, and so on, we'll get the chance to pick up one of these talents, and then we'll fight a loot round again with the predefined neutral creeps to get more items. Now these talents will not all be unlocked right away as a brand new player, but as you just play games, you'll quickly unlock all of them. They're either passive effects that alter your Underlord, such as burning down the house here, or they modify specific abilities, such as Burnout, which affects Supercharge. We can pick up burning down the house, and then notice that our shop did not refresh because it was locked from last round, and now we can spend our gold to buy these units. So let's pick up the Razor and the Crystal Maiden that we know we wanted, as well as perhaps Tiny to go towards a 3-star Tiny in the long term, and then we'll start this combat round against the creeps. Now this entire cycle will simply repeat over and over again of preparation with the new shop, buy units, get gold, and then fight a combat round, and every 5 rounds we get some more items, and it constantly just repeats until all players are eliminated. Typically, games will last between 30 and 40 rounds, although some very close games may last a little bit longer than that if people are not losing too much health total during the game. So let's see what items we get here, and they can continue to increase the power level of our board. If you do happen to lose the creep round, though, which we did not because we have a pretty good build, but other people did lose the creep round, if they would lose, then you still get an item. You just get offered the item as if it was the previous creep round. So the previous round was round 3, and instead we would get an item as if we had won round 3. So on average, it's going to be a lower quality item. So as I'm sure you can tell by now, there are a lot of heroes in the game and a lot of different items, and you can browse them all from the rulebook with this icon in the upper left corner here, either in-game, or you can also get this from the main screen. And this will show you the heroes that you currently have owned, or you can check that off to look at every single unit in the game. So if you want to find out details about, say, Drow Ranger here, you can click on her, learn about her abilities, her alliances, and the different stats at 1, 2, and 3 star. There's also another mechanic that does not allow every unit to be in the game at the same time. You have this mechanic called the jail, which you can click on right here, or you can see this from the main menu. So the way the jail works is every day for 24 hours, there is going to be a certain number of heroes that will be unavailable. So between 8 and 12 units will be unavailable. Today we have 12 units unavailable. And these units serve to reduce the available pool, because if they were all in there, it would make it very hard to find certain upgrades. But they also provide a changing metagame, making certain strategies stronger or weaker on a daily basis. So for instance, Lich is a very good mage unit, and with Lich gone, you have slightly less options to build a mage build. Whenever you hover over the alliance icon, any unit whose face is grayed out, that means that they're in jail that day and will not be available for purchase. So I'm going to exit this game and go back to the main menu. And since it's a bot game, you have the option to come back to this game and continue it at any time. You can also see the jail here from the main menu in the upper right-hand corner, so you can check this without getting into game. And you can also check out all of the different items and heroes and alliances here from the rulebook. Also, if you're interested in finding out more about specific terminology, you can check out the glossary, which details information about different types of status effects and different key concepts, most of which we've covered already. As a newer player, I would definitely recommend you play a lot of games against bots to get a feel for the game and start to know how all of these concepts and units and items work together. But whenever you're ready, you can try your hand at ranked mode. And here in the glossary, we see some details about the ranked system. So you're going to start at 0 rank points at a rank called Upstart 1. And as you gain more rank points by playing games and doing well, finishing in the top half, you're going to gain rank points. So if you get first place in a game, you gain 100, all the way down to gaining 15 for fourth, but then you'll lose some if you finish in the bottom half. When you gain these rank points, you're going to start to climb up the different divisions. Start from Upstart 1, and then you get up to Upstart 2, and so on up to Upstart 5. Whenever you hit 500 rank points, you'll upgrade from Upstart 1 up to Upstart 5 to Grifter 1. And every time you hit one of those little divisions, so Upstart 1, Grifter 2, etc., you're going to gain some bonus rank points here, 50, 45, 40, and so on, decreasing as you climb up the ranks from Upstart all the way up to Big Boss. If you manage to climb all the way to the top, you can achieve the Lord of Whitespire rank, where you'll be ranked on a global leaderboard, and the rank point gains and losses change from a set amount to an elo-based system based on the quality of your opponents. Maybe you have a friend you want to play the game with, rather than just playing solo, and if so, you can give Duos mode a try. Let's go back to the main menu, and in the play option, you have the option to play Duos. It's just in casual mode right now, but eventually they should be releasing ranked Duo modes. Duo modes is pretty similar, although you are able to freely trade resources between you and your teammate, and then trade resources such as units and gold. But each player still fights their normal 1v1 battle. The result of the battle, though, is the combined results of the two players. So if on our team I lose by 5 damage and you win by 7 damage, then our team wins the round and the opposing team lost by a net of 2 damage. There are still 8 teams, so a total of 16 players, but each team only has 100 total life. So games can often be much quicker since there's the potential for large amounts of damage if both players win the round. Currently it's only casual mode, and soon we might get that in ranked mode. There's also another gameplay mode called Freestyle. So over here in the kind of the single player section, instead of a bot match on solos or duos, you can play Freestyle. This is basically a sandbox mode where you can put any kind of combination on board to see how things work, see how fights play out, and just generally play around with the game. It's not a real game or competitive mode, just a test mode, kind of like practice mode as well. If you're interested in cosmetics, there are various achievements to reach, and you can see that on the achievements tab here. Now I've completed most of these, but each one of them has 3 tiers, and they give experience towards the current battle pass, as well as unlocks some icons for you to use on your banner in-game. Currently, the battle pass is called the Proto Pass, which you can level up with XP by either doing these daily challenges or the achievements, or just playing games and doing normal gameplay. You'll unlock different icons, cosmetic effects, board skins, emotes, and all kinds of different stuff. Soon, this Proto Pass will be replaced by a Season 1 Battle Pass, probably in the next few weeks, so you want to make sure to check out all the new features when that does come out. To customize your appearance, you can go into the Loadout tab and equip anything that you have already unlocked. Now, I know that was a whole lot of information to take in, so please feel free to ask me any questions. I would be happy to help you out in the comments down below. One last thing before we go, though, Dota Underlords is still in beta and is actively being developed, so definitely expect some of these things to change. I do know that the item system, for instance, will be slightly reworked in the next few weeks, but I suspect the core concepts will probably stay the same. Also, the jail system is constantly being tweaked, so make sure you stay subscribed to my channel so I can get you all the updates as soon as they come out. Thank you so very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you check out all my other strategy and gameplay videos for Dota Underlords, and I will see you next time.